The first time my mother-in-law asked for my inheritance, she did it with a smile so calm it made my skin crawl. We were sitting at her polished oak dining table, surrounded by the people who were supposed to be my family. A roast chicken was going cold between us. My husband, Daniel, stared at his plate. His father, Greg, kept refilling his wine glass. And Linda, my mother-in-law, folded her hands over her pearl necklace and said, "You have more than enough, Megan. Brandon needs a reliable car. Family helps family." Then she slid a printed listing across the table. It was for a black BMW X5. $48,000. My inheritance was still sitting in an account with my late grandmother's name attached to it. I had not even spent the first dollar. I had barely been able to look at the balance without feeling sick, because every cent of that money came from the woman who had raised me when my own mother couldn't. "What do you mean Brandon needs a car?" I asked. Linda blinked at me as if I had asked something silly. "His truck is embarrassing. He has client meetings." "He's 32, I said, "and he has a truck." "It keeps breaking down," Greg muttered. Brandon, Daniel's younger brother, wasn't even at the table. That was the part I still can't get over. They were trying to spend nearly $50,000 of my grandmother's money on a man who hadn't bothered to show up. Daniel finally looked at me. His face was pale, but his voice was quiet. Too quiet. "Meg, just hear them out." That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not because Linda wanted money. Linda had always wanted something: attention, favors, access to our home, a vote in every decision Daniel and I made. But until that dinner, I had believed Daniel and I were on the same side. I had believed my inheritance was mine. And I had no idea that before Linda ever asked me for that BMW, my husband had already been discussing my money with his family behind my back. But to understand why that dinner hurt so much, you have to understand how normal my life had looked before it all started. 3 years earlier, I was living in a 2-bedroom ranch house in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. The street had maples that turned bright orange every October, a community pool with too much chlorine, and an HOA that sent passive-aggressive emails about trash cans being visible after sunset. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. Daniel and I had bought the house 2 years into our marriage. It had pale gray siding, a narrow front porch, and a kitchen with ugly yellow countertops that we kept promising to replace. We never did, because something more urgent always came up. The water heater, Daniel's student loans, my car's transmission, the roof after a bad spring storm. Still, it was ours. I worked as an office manager for a physical therapy clinic. I handled schedules, insurance calls, payroll issues, and the occasional patient who wanted to argue about why their copay existed. Daniel worked in commercial insurance. He was good at it, organized and patient. The kind of person who color-coded his calendar and remembered everybody's birthdays. At home, he was softer. He made coffee every morning because he knew I was useless before caffeine. He always put my favorite creamer on the grocery list without asking. When I got migraines, he turned off the lights, brought me water, and sat quietly on the edge of the bed until I fell asleep. For a long time, I thought I had gotten lucky. We didn't have children yet. We had talked about it constantly, but we were trying to get our finances under control first. Daniel wanted to pay down the last of his student loans. I wanted a bigger emergency fund. We had a shared spreadsheet called 5-Year Plan, which sounds painfully unromantic now, but back then I thought it was sweet. There were tabs for savings, vacations, retirement, house repairs, and a little section called Maybe Baby. Every few weeks, we would sit on the couch with takeout and update it together. That is a depressing amount of money for groceries, Daniel would say, scrolling through our bank statements. "You buy sparkling water like it's a personality trait," I would tell him. "You buy fancy cheese." Fancy cheese has never betrayed me. He would laugh, pull me against his side, and say, "You're impossible." I loved those ordinary nights. I loved that we had built routines. Saturday morning farmers markets, Sunday laundry, movies after dinner with one of us falling asleep before the ending. We were not rich, but we were stable. And I thought stability was one of the most underrated forms of happiness. The difficult part of our lives was Daniel's family. Linda had never openly hated me. That would have been easier. Instead, she was sweet in public and sharp in private, like a woman who knew exactly how far she could push before someone called her rude. She would compliment my dress and then ask if I had gained weight. She would bring over casseroles we had not requested and then look disappointed when we didn't immediately rearrange our evening around her visit. She called Daniel my baby, even though he was 34 years old and 6 feet tall. Her favorite habit was treating our house like an extension of hers. "Oh, I was just in the neighborhood," she would say, already parked in our driveway. Then she'd walk through the kitchen, open the refrigerator, and ask why we were buying that overpriced organic nonsense instead of regular milk. Greg was less intrusive, but he backed Linda in everything. He was a retired sales manager who had spent most of his adult life letting her make decisions while pretending he was above the drama. If Linda criticized me, Greg would suddenly find something fascinating on his phone. If she asked Daniel for help, he would nod like her request was perfectly reasonable. And then there was Brandon. Brandon was Daniel's younger brother by 4 years, but he had somehow remained permanently 17 in their parents' eyes. He bounced between jobs, apartments, girlfriends, and business ideas. One month, he was going to become a real estate investor. The next month, he was selling fitness supplements online. Then he got into cryptocurrency, then pressure washing, then some kind of luxury travel affiliate program that involved him taking pictures in hotel lobbies he couldn't afford to stay in. Every failure was someone else's fault. His boss didn't recognize talent. His landlord was greedy. His ex was controlling. The economy was impossible. The timing was wrong. Linda always had a reason to rescue him. "He's just finding his path," she'd say. "He needs encouragement," Greg would add. Daniel used to roll his eyes when we were alone. "Brandon could set his own hair on fire and Mom would blame the lighter," he said once while we drove home from Thanksgiving. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled gravy on the passenger seat. "You shouldn't laugh," Daniel said, grinning. "It's tragic." "But true." "It's true," he admitted. That was why I didn't see the danger coming. Daniel understood what his parents were like. He complained about them with me. He agreed that they enabled Brandon. He told me we would never let their chaos become our chaos. Then my grandmother Evelyn died. Even now, writing that sentence feels too simple for what it did to me. Grandma Evelyn was not technically my biological grandmother. She was my mother's aunt. But she took me in when I was 11 after my mother's addiction got bad enough that the school counselor called social services. My father had disappeared years before. Grandma Evelyn had a small brick house in Dayton, a sharp tongue, a garden full of tomatoes, and a rule that nobody left her table hungry. She taught me how to cook chicken and dumplings, how to iron a blouse, how to balance a checkbook, and how to stop apologizing for taking up space. "You do not owe people your peace just because they share your blood," she used to tell me. When I was 16 and crying because my mother had missed another birthday, Grandma Evelyn sat beside me on the porch and handed me a tissue. "Some people are broken," she said. "That is sad, but it does not make them your responsibility." She died at 83 after a short battle with pancreatic cancer. By the end, she was so small beneath the hospital blankets that I could barely recognize her hands, but she still squeezed mine whenever I came in. The last clear thing she said to me was, "Don't let anybody make you feel small, sweetheart." At the time, I thought she meant my mother. I didn't know she was warning me about a whole different kind of family. After the funeral, I spent weeks moving through life like I was underwater. I went to work. I answered emails. I smiled when patients made jokes. Then I came home and cried in the shower so Daniel wouldn't hear me. He was gentle with me then. He held me when I couldn't sleep. He took over dinner. He handled calls from relatives I barely knew. When the attorney contacted me about the estate, Daniel offered to come with me. "You don't have to face that alone," he said. I remember looking at him across our kitchen island, at the tired kindness in his face, and thinking, this is why I married him. Grandma Evelyn had been more careful with money than anyone I had ever known. She wore the same winter coat for 15 years. She bought coupons in bulk. She never took vacations farther than a lake cabin in Michigan. I knew she had savings, but I assumed it would mostly go to medical bills and the house. I was wrong. At the attorney's office, a woman named Patricia Miller opened a folder and explained that Grandma Evelyn had sold her house years before she got sick, moved into a small senior apartment, and invested the proceeds carefully. She had left me everything after a few smaller gifts to charity. The final amount, after expenses, was $186,400. I remember staring at the number on the paperwork. My throat tightened so fast I couldn't breathe. Daniel reached for my hand beneath the table. "Meg," he whispered. "I don't know what to do with this," I said. Patricia's expression softened. "You don't have to decide today." That money did not feel like luck. It felt like grief with a dollar sign attached. Daniel and I agreed to put it in a separate high-yield savings account until I could think clearly. The account was in my name only because Patricia recommended it, and Daniel didn't object. "It's your grandmother's gift," he said. "You decide when you're ready." For months, I barely touched it. I used a small amount to pay off my remaining student loan balance, which was $8,700. I donated $2,000 to the animal shelter Grandma Evelyn volunteered at. The rest sat there. Sometimes I would open the account app and see the number, $175,700. Then I would close it again. I had vague dreams for it, replacing our kitchen, starting a college fund if we had a baby, maybe taking one real vacation with Daniel, somewhere with blue water and no work emails. Mostly, though, I wanted the money to stay untouched because using it made Grandma Evelyn's absence feel too real. Linda found out about the inheritance at Christmas. I never told her directly. I told no one except Daniel, my best friend Ashley, and the attorney. But at Christmas dinner, Linda cornered me in the kitchen while I was trying to make coffee. "So," she said, stirring sugar into her tea, "Daniel says Evelyn left you quite a bit." The spoon clicked against the mug. I looked at her. "He told you?" "Oh, honey. He tells me everything." She smiled as though that was a comforting thing to say. "I'm so glad. You deserve some security." I forced a smile. "Thank you." Then she tilted her head. "Are you planning to invest it?" "I'm not sure yet." "Well, don't let it just sit there. Money should be useful." I laughed lightly because I didn't know what else to do. "It is sitting in savings for now." Linda's eyes flicked toward the dining room, where Brandon was loudly explaining to Greg why he was basically one deal away from a huge career break. "You know," she said, "Brandon has been trying to build something for himself. A little help at the right time can change a person's whole future." I stared at her. She gave me that same polished smile. Just something to think about. At dinner, I mentioned it to Daniel in a low voice while everyone argued over whether mashed potatoes needed garlic. "Your mom made a weird comment about my inheritance," I said. Daniel sighed. "What did she say?" "She brought up helping Brandon." He rubbed a hand over his face. "Ignore her. She thinks every dollar in the family should somehow circle back to him." "You told her the amount?" "I didn't tell her the exact amount." "You told her enough." "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't think she'd say anything. I wanted to stay angry." I really did. But he looked embarrassed, and I was exhausted from grieving, and the whole room smelled like cinnamon candles and overcooked ham. "Just don't discuss my money with her again," I said. I won't. He kissed my temple. I promise. For a while, that seemed like the end of it. January came, then February. Daniel got a small raise. I started taking a pottery class on Wednesday nights because Ashley said I needed a hobby that didn't involve spreadsheets or stress cleaning the house. We painted the bedroom a warm shade of green. We booked a long weekend in Charleston for our anniversary. Life settled into its familiar rhythm again. Linda still made comments, but they were easy enough to dismiss. "Wouldn't it be nice to upgrade your car?" she asked one day. "My car is fine," I said. "Fine is such a low standard," she replied. Another time, when she came over uninvited and noticed the kitchen counters, she said, "If I had received almost $200,000, I'd certainly make this place look less dated." Daniel heard her and said, "Mom, enough." She held up both hands. "I'm just saying." I was grateful he defended me. I told myself that was what mattered. Then, one rainy Thursday in April, I came home early from work because the clinic's internet went down. Daniel's car was in the driveway, which surprised me. He was supposed to be in a client meeting until 6. When I walked in, I heard his voice from the living room. "No, Mom, I understand," he was saying. I stopped in the hallway. The house smelled like wet pavement and the lemon cleaner I had used that morning. My purse slid slowly from my shoulder, but I caught it before it hit the floor. Daniel kept talking, unaware that I was there. "She's still emotional about Grandma Evelyn. You can't just push her." There was a pause. Linda's voice was faint through the speaker, but I could make out one sentence clearly. "Then you need to make her understand that this is what families do." I stood in the hallway with my hand still wrapped around my purse strap, unable to move. Daniel's voice dropped lower. "I told you, Mom. I'll talk to her. But you can't keep bringing it up every time we see you." Linda gave a little laugh through the speaker. "Daniel, I am not asking for anything unreasonable. Brandon needs transportation if he's going to get serious about his career. He has transportation. He has a truck that sounds like it's dying. He can buy another truck." "With what?" Linda snapped. "You know he's had a hard year." I stepped into the living room. Daniel was sitting on the couch with his laptop open beside him. The second he saw me, his whole body went still. "Meg," he said. Linda must have heard the change in his voice. "Is she there?" I looked directly at Daniel. "Put it on speaker." He swallowed. "You don't have to do this." "That is not your decision." For one long second, he didn't move. Then he pressed the button. Linda's voice filled the room. "Megan, honey, I hope you didn't misunderstand." "I heard enough," I said. The rain tapped hard against the windows. Daniel's laptop screen glowed blue in the dim room, and I could smell damp wool from my coat. Linda sighed like I was making her life difficult. "We were only talking about options for Brandon." "No," I said. "You were talking about my money." "It's not just money," she said. "It's an opportunity to help someone you love." "Brandon isn't someone I love." That landed badly. Daniel flinched. Linda went quiet for half a second, then said, "Well, that is a cold thing to say about your husband's brother." "What is cold?" I said, feeling my voice shake. "Is discussing my inheritance like it belongs to a group project." Daniel stood up. "Meg, please, let's not turn this into a fight." I stared at him. "You're already in a fight. You just picked their side before I knew there was one." He looked exhausted, but not surprised. "That hurt worse than anything." Linda spoke again. "Daniel has been trying to help you understand. You have nearly $176,000 sitting in an account while Brandon is struggling." My stomach dropped. I had never told her the updated balance. I looked at Daniel. "You told her exactly how much was in my account." He ran both hands through his hair. "I told her because she kept asking." "You promised me you wouldn't discuss my money with her again." "I know." "You promised." "I know," he repeated, softer. But he didn't sound sorry. He sounded inconvenienced. I ended the call myself. Then I stood there, staring at my husband across the living room we had painted together, where we had eaten takeout and built our stupid little 5-year plan. "How long?" I asked. He looked away. "How long have you been talking to them about this?" "It started around Christmas." Christmas. The kitchen. Linda's spoon hitting the side of her mug. Daniel kissing my temple and promising me he would never do it again. I felt something hollow open in my chest. "Did you tell Brandon he could have my money?" "No," Daniel said quickly. "Not exactly." "What does that mean?" He hesitated. That hesitation was an answer. "Daniel. He knows we might be able to help him," he said. "That's all." I laughed once, but it came out sharp and ugly. Might be able to help him? With $48,000? He doesn't need all of it at once. "Oh, good. So you were only planning to steal it in installments?" His face hardened. "That isn't fair." "Fair?" I said. "You sat here while your mother talked about my grandmother's inheritance like Brandon had earned it." "No one said he earned it. No, you just decided he deserved it more than I did." Daniel walked toward me, reaching for my hand. I stepped back. His fingers hung in the air between us. "Meg," he said quietly, "we're married. We're supposed to make decisions together." "Yes," I said. "Together. Not you, your mother, your father, and your brother deciding what I should do with the money my grandmother left me. It could change Brandon's life. So could getting a job he keeps." That was the first time I saw real anger in Daniel's face. He is trying. Trying what? To get rescued before he has to face consequences? Don't talk about my brother like that. Then don't talk about my grandmother's money like it's his reward. Daniel stared at me for a moment, breathing hard through his nose. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. "You don't even need all of it." I felt my knees weaken. Not because he yelled. He didn't. He said it calmly, almost gently, like he was explaining something obvious to a child. "You don't even need all of it." I looked at the man I had loved for 6 years and realized he had been measuring my grief in available dollars. That night, I slept in the guest room with the door locked. Daniel knocked once around midnight. "Can we talk?" he asked. "No." "Meg, please." "No." The next morning, he acted like we had simply had an unpleasant disagreement about paint colors or a vacation budget. He made coffee. He asked if I wanted breakfast. He told me he was sorry things had gotten emotional. That word nearly made me throw my mug at him. Instead, I said, "I'm going to Ashley's tonight." He looked up from his toast. "Why?" "Because I need to talk to someone who doesn't see me as an ATM with a pulse." His mouth tightened. "That's dramatic." I picked up my keys. You know what? Maybe I am dramatic, but at least I'm not dishonest. Ashley lived 20 minutes away in a third-floor apartment with plants in every window and a couch covered in blankets because her cat, Pickles, had destroyed the original fabric. The second she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She just pulled me inside. I cried so hard I got mascara on her gray sweatshirt. When I finally told her everything, Ashley sat across from me on the floor, holding a glass of wine she had forgotten to drink. "He said you don't need all of it?" she asked. I nodded. She set her glass down carefully. "Megan, I need you to hear me. That money is not a family fund. It is not a marriage bonus. It is not Brandon's emergency car dealership coupon." Despite everything, I laughed. Then she said, "And you need to protect yourself." I don't think Daniel would actually take it. Ashley's expression changed. Not cruel, just sad. "You already know he would," she said. "He just wants you to hand it over so he doesn't have to feel like the bad guy." The next morning, I called Patricia Miller. I sat in my office with the door shut, staring at the framed physical therapy certificates on the wall, while Patricia explained that the inheritance was separate property because it had been left directly to me and had stayed in an account only in my name. Do not transfer it into a joint account, she said. Do not use it to pay shared debts without getting legal advice first, and change every password connected to your finances. My palms went cold. Why would I need legal advice? There was a pause. Because, Patricia said gently, when a spouse starts treating separate funds as marital property, it is important to create a record. A record. That afternoon, I changed the password to my bank account, my email, my phone, and the home security app. I froze my credit. I changed the garage code. Then I called a locksmith and scheduled him for the next day. I still hated myself for doing it. Part of me kept waiting for Daniel to walk through the door with flowers and an apology so sincere that I would feel foolish for panicking. Instead, he came home carrying a bottle of wine and a folder. "I thought we could talk numbers," he said. I stared at the folder. "What numbers?" He set it on the kitchen island and opened it. Inside was a printed spreadsheet. At the top, in bold letters, it said, Brandon Vehicle Plan. There were columns for down payment, insurance, registration, emergency maintenance, and something called career transition support. The total was not $48,000. It was $63,500. I looked at Daniel. "What is career transition support?" "He's trying to get into higher-end sales," Daniel said. "A nicer car helps him look established." "He needs $63,000 to look established?" "He needs a fresh start." I pushed the folder back toward him. "No." "Meg!" "No. You haven't even read it. I don't need to read a plan for why your brother deserves $63,500 from me." Daniel's jaw worked. "From us," he said. I stood so fast my chair scraped against the tile. "There it is again. We're married. And that means you get to donate my inheritance to your brother? It means we should care about each other's families. My grandmother was my family. I know that." "No," I said. "You don't. Because if you did, you would understand that every dollar in that account came from a woman who spent her life saving me from people who wanted more from her than they were willing to give." Daniel's face softened for a second. Then he said, "You're making this about Evelyn because it makes you feel noble." I stopped breathing. He must have seen it on my face because he immediately looked sorry. But sorry came too late. 3 days later, Linda invited us to dinner. I told Daniel I wasn't going. He said, "Please come. Let's clear the air." I should have known what that meant. The moment we walked into Linda and Greg's house, I saw the printed BMW listing on the dining room table. The black X5, $48,000. Brandon wasn't there. That was when Linda gave me her speech about family helping family, and Daniel told me to hear them out. I looked around the table at all of them. Linda with her pearls, Greg with his wine glass, Daniel with his careful, quiet face. Then I pulled my phone from my purse. "I am hearing you," I said. "But now you're going to hear me." Linda frowned. "Megan, don't be childish." "I'm not being childish. I'm being documented." Daniel's face changed. I opened my email and turned my phone toward the table. "I found a shared tablet in our kitchen cabinet," I said. "The one Daniel uses for work when his laptop is charging." Greg shifted in his chair. Daniel whispered, "Meg, don't." "Oh, I think I should." I read the first message aloud. It was from Daniel to Linda, sent 2 weeks earlier. "Don't mention the full number to Meg. If she thinks it's just the BMW, she may agree faster." Linda's face drained of color. I read the next one. From Linda to Daniel. "Once Brandon has the car, he can use the rest for deposits and insurance. She has no children and no real expenses." Greg slowly set down his wine glass. Daniel reached for my phone. "Give me that." I pulled it back. "No." Then I read the message that made the room go silent. It was from Daniel to Brandon. "Mom and Dad are worried you'll blow this, so don't talk about the $15,000 cash part until after Meg agrees to the car. We can make it work. She doesn't need to know every detail. Brandon had replied with a thumbs-up emoji and one sentence. Finally. I knew you'd get her to loosen up. My hands shook, but my voice did not. Linda stared at Daniel. You told him that? Daniel looked at her like she had betrayed him. It would have been funny if I hadn't been so devastated. Greg cleared his throat. This is getting out of hand. No, I said. It has been out of hand for months. I'm just the last person who got told. Linda tried to recover. Those were private family conversations. Exactly, I said. And I was not family in any of them. I was funding. Daniel stood abruptly. You're humiliating me. I looked straight at him. You humiliated yourself the moment you decided a grieving woman was easier to manage than an adult brother was to support. No one spoke. Even Linda had nothing. Then Daniel said, I never took anything from you. I nodded. You're right. You didn't. Because I caught you before you could. I reached into my purse again and placed a second document on the table. It was a letter from a lender. 2 days earlier, someone had applied for a $50,000 personal loan using my name, my social security number, and our home address. The application had been flagged because I froze my credit. Daniel's face went white. Greg looked from the letter to his son. Daniel? I was just checking rates, Daniel said. Using my information? I asked. I wasn't going to submit it. But you did submit it. I didn't mean for it to go through. Linda jumped in. He was trying to find a solution. I turned to her. A solution to what? The problem of your grown son not being able to afford a luxury SUV? Megan, she said sharply, you are tearing this family apart over money. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, no, Linda. I am refusing to let this family tear me apart over money. That was the last dinner I ever had in that house. The next morning, I met with a divorce attorney. I hated saying the word divorce. It felt too big for my mouth, too final, like breaking a plate you knew you could never glue back together. But my attorney listened without interrupting while I showed her the messages, the loan notice, and the screenshots Ashley had helped me organize. When I finished, she said, you did the right thing by acting quickly. Daniel moved into his parents' house after he was served. For a while, he sent long messages about therapy, forgiveness, pressure, family expectations, and how he had only wanted to help Brandon get ahead. I read every message once. Then I saved them. I didn't answer most of them. The divorce was not dramatic in court. There was no screaming, no television-worthy confession, just paperwork, dates, signatures, and the awful, clean sound of a judge confirming that our marriage was over. Daniel did not get a cent of the inheritance. He also had to deal with the lender inquiry himself after I filed a fraud report and gave my attorney every document I had. The application never turned into a loan, but the damage to trust was already permanent. Brandon did not get the BMW. A few months later, Ashley told me she saw him driving a used sedan with a dented bumper. I hope it got him where he needed to go. Linda stopped calling after my attorney sent a formal notice telling her not to contact me directly. Greg sent one email. It said, I'm sorry things went this far. I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. Things did not go anywhere on their own. People carried them there. A year later, I sold the ranch house. The gray siding, the yellow counters, the bedroom Daniel and I painted green. I cried when I handed over the keys, but not because I wanted him back. I cried because I had finally accepted that a home is not the place where you learn to tolerate betrayal. I moved into a smaller apartment closer to work. I took Grandma Evelyn's old recipe box with me, along with her chipped blue mixing bowl and the photograph of us in her tomato garden. I still have most of the inheritance. Some of it went toward a down payment on a condo that is entirely mine. Some went into retirement savings. Some paid for a trip to Michigan, where I sat by a lake and let myself miss Grandma Evelyn without feeling guilty for surviving her. And one Saturday morning, I used a little of it to replace my kitchen counters. Not because Linda had been right about them, because I wanted to. Grandma Evelyn once told me I did not owe people my peace just because they shared my blood. She never got to meet Linda, but she understood exactly the kind of people I would have to become strong enough to leave behind.